to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright. Good weekend, guys. Good football weekend.
Great weekend. Enjoyed listening to you on the call that game, man. Did a great job. It was fun. Whew.
Listening to you on that call makes me feel like I need to respond. So you flip around and I got to you and you would talk and I felt like saying, we'll take a break. We'll be right back. After everything you said. But then I got used to it and it was fun.
Oh, I missed you this weekend, Jenna Wolf. I missed you so much. Oh, God.
Okay, we got a great Monday show for you today. Drew Brees is now officially concerned.
Some things change, some things stay the same.
About the hand injury that forced him out of the game. Ezekiel Elliott thinks Dak is, quote, one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. And Julio Jones earned every last penny of that new contract he just got last night. And that's where we're going to start. Little Sunday night football. Eagles taking on the Falcons. We jump right to the fourth quarter. Philly down 4. Carson Wentz gets off the improbable throw to Mac Collins. Later in the drive, Wentz with the QB sneak for the rushing touchdown. 2-point conversion good. Philly takes the 3-point lead. Falcons do not go away. It's a 4th and 3. Matt Ryan to Julio Jones. And Julio off to the races. 54 yards in for the touchdown to take the lead. Eagles, one last chance on 4th down. Wentz to Zach Ertz. But Ertz is stopped just shy of the first down. And the Falcons go on to take the win 24-20. Both teams now move to 1-1 on the season. All right, Chris Carter, let's start big and end up small. First, how did the Falcons pull off this one?
Well, the Eagles made too many mistakes. This game reminded me of one of the games that they played last year, beginning of the season, week number 1, where the Falcons lost a lot of players, ultimately ended up changing their destination during the regular season. But when you lose the type of, especially the wide receivers, Alshon's got a calf, Deshaun Jackson, he's got a groin. Those guys not being in the lineups, even though their backups were able to make some plays there at the end, when you don't have your front line guys, that last drive, and you're going down the field, Nelson Aguilar, Ertz are the only 2 premier receivers that you have, of your regular receivers that you have on the field. You could see, and all the mistakes that Philadelphia made earlier in the game, they couldn't recover from them. And then at the end, you talked about Julio Jones. After a very mediocre 7.5 quarters of playing football after signing the record deal, averaging $22 million a year for a wide receiver, he comes up with the big play. They make a great call. They have a what you call a jailbreak screen, which is a blitz beater. They had an all-out blitz, 0 coverage, and this is one of the things that you do. If you're not going to bump Julio Jones and you have an all-out blitz, they have more people coming than what you can block. Matty Ice makes a great audible, gets him into the jailbreak screen, and Julio finishes the deal. It's basically him in a foot race against one of the safeties, and he's going to win that often. So the Falcons were able to, you don't want this week to be answering questions of, man, you guys start 0-2 after changing their defensive coordinator, changing their offensive coordinator, changing their special teams coordinator. This team is very, very fortunate after playing bad in week number 1 in Minnesota and being dominated to squeak out this win at the end in their home opener, Nick.
This was almost a great win for Philadelphia in this regard. Atlanta thoroughly outplayed Philly throughout this game, but Matt Ryan made some uncharacteristic mistakes and repeated mistakes, including a interception in the end zone on 1st down on a pass he simply does not need to make.
Yeah, I would say, though, his arm got tipped. If you look at the highlight of that, I mean, it took something off the throw. And if you watch the ball, when the ball comes out of his hand, he didn't have a natural follow-through. It was like his hand opened up when someone hit the bottom of his arm.
On that one in particular, absolutely.
Yes.
This was a game that Atlanta clearly didn't trust their rushing attack, and because of that, even with a lead, they were throwing it repeatedly, and Matt Ryan kept Philly in the game. And when you saw Carson Wentz, you saw the play he completed on that second-to-last drive that they had to keep it alive and then dives for a touchdown. It's like, wow. For Philadelphia, these are the types of games that Super Bowl contenders find a way to steal. And then that 4th down play, which I didn't know was an audible, but that was a brilliant play call in the moment. Jake Matthews comes out and just annihilates Maddox, the corner, and then nobody's catching Julio Jones. You mentioned before the show he got up to 20 miles per hour on this run, and that means he wasn't at top speed for him if it were earlier in the game, because he can go faster than 20 miles per hour. And then late in the game, or after this, Philly has another chance. They come up just short. But to me, the takeaway from Philly will be the atrophy of injuries, and Carson Wentz got the hell beat out of him in this football game repeatedly. He made plays despite it, but Philadelphia comes away with this game with more damage than just one loss. They come away with Wentz banged up. We don't know how many receivers they're going to have available next week. We talked about the depth of this team, Jenna, but this was a lot of damage for just one football game.
So that right there is what I want to get to. The reason I picked the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl is because of the depth, because they seem like they're the one team that can overcome, injuries week after week and still put a team out there. Last night, was it a case of they were just too riddled with injuries, or did they just not have an answer for the
Well, you asked me what happened. If you don't go over the injuries, then you're missing a key part to the game. Deshaun Jackson has 2 50-yard touchdowns in week number 1. Well, where was he? He was hurt. Well, Alshon Jeffries, well, where was he in the game? Look at the stat sheet. Well, where was he? Well, he was hurt. It's not an excuse. It's just an explanation of what's going to happen. They did have competent guys fill in, but they had made too many mistakes to overcome. If they don't have the depth for which you talked about and the reason why you picked them, they're not in this game. So, yes, they do have depth. They do have depth at 3 different groups. The wide receivers, they got a lot of depth. All right? The offensive line, they got a lot of depth, but their frontline guys aren't playing great. And their defensive front, they have a lot of depth. So don't let one loss in Atlanta against a team that has to pull out that jailbreak screen to be able to win that game.
Right.
I wouldn't overreact to that. The depth is still there. And for Philadelphia, if you want some silver lining, these aren't season-ending injuries. If you go around the National Football League yesterday, if you thought week number 1 was bad, week number 2 was even worse. And to me, it speaks to the lack of preseason, the lack of conditioning, and then also being there talking to players they can sense. Larry Fitzgerald, Earl Thomas, guys saying, no, we're not in game shape early, so we're going to see some significant injuries in the first month of the season.
Okay, Eagles and Falcons now both 1-1 on this season. Which of these 2 teams, Nick, do you trust most moving forward?
Philadelphia with one small asterisk. To me, Philadelphia is better than Atlanta for the length of the season. Philadelphia does have more depth. I think Philadelphia has more different ways to beat you. Despite not playing well yesterday, it did take a 4th and 3 for them to lose. And then, even then, they were in position to potentially take the lead if Zach Ertz goes 1 yard deeper on his route. But they've got to find a way to protect Carson Wentz better. Carson Wentz was getting hit repeatedly. If you watch just a longer highlight package of last night, so many of those plays are broken plays where he is getting contacted and then finding a way to escape. Wentz, he got left the game briefly, and McCown came in because he had his ribs checked out. I think Philadelphia is better, but if Carson Wentz got hurt again yesterday, even though it was only briefly, and it wasn't his fault. I mean, he was not being protected throughout. So I have a concern even greater now than I did before about Wentz's health. But in totality, I trust Philadelphia more.
The way you protect Carson Wentz is you got to be able to run the ball. Even though they had 21 rush attempts, none of the running backs, 3 of them touched the ball, average more than 3 yards a touch. If your longest run is 5 yards, your quarterback's going to get brutalized. And that's what we saw in last night's game. So nice remedy, because there's only 2 ways. You can either run the ball or you can go max protection. You're not going to go max protection because your tight end might be your best receiver. So their only remedy would be able to run the ball to create some balance. Doug Peterson can't fall in. They weren't way behind in this game. You have to have some balance in the NFL, and if not, they're going to tee off on your offensive line, and the Philly line, it might be ranked by Pro Football Focus as the best line, but right now they're not playing up to that level.
All right, Eagles weren't the only team with injuries last night. Coming up, could Drew Brees' hand injury derail the Saints' season? That's next on FS1. You can always check us out on the Fox Sports channel. That's on SiriusXM. We'll